This map shows our paddle loop from Pioneer Trail Park to US 2, out to Little Bay de Noc, and back to Pioneer Trail Park. Hi, welcome back to the Escanaba River. This is going to be our final stretch of the river that will take us out to the mouth. Up that way where we'll be paddling is where the Escanaba paper mill Verso is, and where there's the final dam on that river. And so we'll be exploring that. Some of the chemical testing we'll do here, we'll be investigating a little bit to see how the water and the ecosystem are doing. Back in August, there was a bit of a spill from the mill of black liquor, which is an organic compound that results from the breakdown of the pulpwood that they use there. And normally it's burned to generate energy. However, this time a ruptured pipe released it into this river and it killed a bunch of fish, mostly sport fish it sounds like, or at least that's what they've noticed. Things like northern pike and walleye and bass. Apart from those dead fish, they say that it's back to normal. The paper mill also had a leak back in July from a ruptured pipe that spilled an estimated 12,000 gallons of sewage water over a 4-day period into the river. They've since repaired that, but their testing of that showed that there had been some pollution taking place there. So the question is that considered point source or non-point source pollution? Think about that one. So just so you know, there's the boat launch where we're going to be putting in, and just in the short while that we've been here, I picked up several pieces of garbage, and I just wanted to show that to you because that would have been part of what we would have done with students if they had been here. So we have a water bottle, we have 2 White Claws, we have a McChicken wrapper, we have some plastic coming from other things, a Mike's Hard Lemonade kind of cap, a gum wrapper, and a jingle ball. And that's just in this little area. We'll see if there's more along the river. This is the parking area that is at the boat launch for Pioneer Trail Park in Escanaba, Michigan, along the Escanaba River. And I wanted to point out that there is a railroad track that runs through there. We thought we heard a train, but it doesn't sound like it's coming along that track. But one of the questions raised then is, what happens along the river if a train derails or has a spill of something that it's transporting? What effect might that have on the ecosystem? So Greg Bruff is with us again today. He's going to be doing the digital testing on the water. And as he just noted, I'm going to take a look off the end of the dock here. You can see that the water is a little bit more turbid than where we've been before. I cannot see the bottom here. As I move over this way a little bit farther, and with the reflection it's hard, but we can see the bottom on this part of the water and over here. So how far down do you think the Secchi disc would go before it disappears in this part?
I would guess only about, I'm looking at leaves over here, and I'm saying maybe less than 2 feet.
Okay, so we did our chemical tests and our digital tests. Greg is getting everything put away in the digital one. He found the dissolved oxygen to be 9.09. The temperature was 15 degrees Celsius. Conductivity was 236.9, which seems kind of high compared to other spots on the river. And the pH was 7.25. Looking at our chemical tests over here, we have our dissolved oxygen, and that looks like it's pretty close to the 4, somewhere between 4 and 8 on that. We have our phosphate right there in the blue, and it looks like,
well, that's
one,
why
maybe
you say
2.
1.5.
Yeah, and then the nitrate is pretty darn low also. It's at maybe at the 5 parts per million. And then on the other side we have our pH, and pH looks like it's in that 8 range. It's a little bit more there. Lots of places to choose from for sketching here. I think I'm going to go right in that direction there and get some of the trees and some of the reeds and some of the water. And Greg is right over there at the end of the dock where he was doing the digital testing, and he is doing a sketch of his own, and we'll go check on him in a little bit. So I was looking out over that way, and here's what I've sketched so far. It's a real simplified view of it, but now I'm going to add some water to my paintbrush and see how that goes. We're just going to walk right down here and dip it in the river. Kind of fun to actually use the river to do its own coloration, hey? So these are watercolor pencils, so as I add the water, it kind of gives some of the effect of blending them. You can still see some of the lines from the pencils, but it gives it kind of a nice little blending of colors. And now that we have some wetness on there, we can go ahead and see if we can add a little bit more color to it. Let's check on Greg and see what he's doing over here. So exactly which way are you looking when you're doing your sketch?
I'm looking up the creek, up the river.
Oh,
here.
Yeah.
And
So he's looking
kind of an
that way.
interesting interplay of clouds and different kinds of trees and the water and then the cattails.
Yeah, and the pretty colors on the trees too.
Yeah.
Nice sky. All right. It's
Oh.
kind of cool to see the reflection of the clouds in the water around you while you're doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come back and check on you in a bit. Okay, so here we are. There's my view and there's my sketch. Not as talented as Greg, but it sure does. I think it represents what I'm seeing over there. All right, checking back in with Greg on his nature journal there. Tip this up a little. There we go. Hard to see. Can you tip it just a little toward us? There we go. Nope, not that way. I was trying to get the brightness of the sun off of it just a tiny bit. It's looking pretty good. I like the greens that you're using in there. Again, he's looking way over that way. This nature journal sketch represents the view looking upstream from the boat launch where we put in. Okay, we're starting here along the river. Just left the boat launch, have the trip computer set on the GPS unit, and I'm going to start paddling that way because I'm drifting backwards. We're going to go upstream first, maybe get up a little closer to where that dam is, and then we'll head downstream to the mouth. It's a nice day, maybe around 50 degrees. Mostly sunny, some pretty high clouds, just puffy ones, cumulus clouds. Greg, are those all cattails to our left there? So Pioneer Trail Park is a little park with a hiking trail and a campground and a boat launch and a playground and all sorts of great stuff going on. It's operated by the Delta County Parks, I believe. There are fees for camping, but there were no fees for us to come in to do this lovely paddle. And with the river high, this section is all filled in with water. Any idea how deep it is right here? 6 feet.
Warblers up here on the top of the tree.
Some little warblers up in the top of a tree up there. Let's see if I can turn. Oh, they're flitting around a little bit. Right up there. Across the way from Pioneer Trail Park are many homes that are along the river. They're kind of up on a little bit of a bank or a bluff. So their yards don't necessarily come right down to the river, as we've seen in other sections. And we're coming around to the main channel of the river out here. Across the river you can see a rather big pole barny kind of garage on that bank. And over to the right I can see US 2, which crosses the river there. And we can hear the traffic, including trucks, cars, big motorcycles, people with campers. It's a pretty busy section of road. Probably the busiest section of the river that we've been on as far as highway traffic nearby. And up ahead you can also see one of the stacks at the paper mill at Verso. Greg asked me to point out all these dead ash trees along here. And when asked whether he thought it was from the level of the water being so high or from the emerald ash borer, he said it was most likely a combination of those things. It's hard to tell. I don't know how much they like being in water, but with the water level as high as it is, what used to maybe be drier land is now kind of a wetland. I am approaching the US 2 bridge, which goes over the Escanaba River. I'm also approaching the dam. I don't intend to go up close to it. They are releasing some water out of it, and as I get closer you might be able to see that. But you can also see where both current and a little breeze have moved the water around a little. Back where we were it was rather still and the clouds were being reflected nicely. You can get a clearer view of the mill. Pick up on all the road noise that you get in this section. That's a different kind of pollution. Noise pollution from motor vehicles and other things is a type of pollution, and people consider that when they're looking at properties and when they're looking at where they want to be and spend their time. Because this is a major thoroughfare, there is traffic of every sort that goes across this bridge, except for trains. Trains do not cross this bridge. Okay, so over that way, straight ahead of me is where the water is being let out from the dam. Just a small chute of water right now. It's not the whole full dam's worth. Otherwise we'd have some pretty fast moving water. Over to the north of me there's another little channel that cuts back closer to Pioneer Trail Park, and on the water was some sort of duck or other waterfowl. You may or may not be able to see it up in the sky, but it looks like we have a couple of circling turkey vultures or something up there. So the distance that we traveled to get to that point where we were closer to the bridge but not all the way there was 0.65 miles with a little meandering, but right around that amount. I'm hearing a blue jay somewhere off to my right. So that's one of the species that we're finding along the river here. Where we put in, we saw a dragonfly. Greg saw those two birds up in the dead tree. And I've been hearing one other one, but I cannot identify it. So ahead of me is the two things, actually. It's parts of an old bridge and then the newer railroad bridge here. So you can see off to my right here. I'll point right at it here. There's some old pilings from a previous bridge that went across there. And then this way is the newer railroad bridge here. You can get a better view of those old pilings. Again, you can see a cluster of trees, maybe alders, that didn't survive because of the high level of water. Up ahead we can see an old railroad yard and the stacks from the no longer used electrical facility that was over there. There's a coal-operated plant, and it rests on the shore over to the south of the mouth of the Escanaba River. So over to my right here is where that railroad yard is, and there is a car waiting to get into that building, maybe for some maintenance. Up ahead of us, we're coming to the public access site that's a boat launch for people who want to put in and go out to the mouth and do some fishing. Flying above, up ahead, there's an eagle. Kind of hard to see. It's just so far off that it's harder to see, but species number 4. So directly across from me is an invasive species that has really taken over this little bank here. It's called a Japanese knotweed, generally used as some sort of ornamental, and it usually gets away from whoever the gardener is and then takes over. Off to that direction there, the south, is that old electrical plant, not functioning. That's the public access boat launch. There are 3 nice looking fishing piers for people to use, and a couple of people may be fishing from them. And ahead of me is the opening of the mouth of the Escanaba right into Little Bay de Noc. So a lot of the stuff to our left here has been just natural habitat. I haven't seen houses built up on it. And then to the right, after the boat launch, it looks as though they've kept that somewhat natural as well. The benefits of having natural habitat rather than man-influenced habitat or man-managed habitat can be that all of that growth along the river can help with filtering water and holding on to the banks and providing habitat for animals and creating some small hiding places for fish. Coming up to some marker buoys. Heading out, we keep those on our left. As we're coming back into the channel, we would keep that red one on our right. The saying is red on the right, returning. Up ahead farther, I can see a green one up there too. And so that marks where boats should come in and go out so they can avoid some of the hazards that might be in the water, whether it's stumps, pilings, shallow spaces, whatever the case may be. I see a couple of ducks flapping along on the water there. That's yet another species that we can count. They just did a splash down into the water. I'm nearly at the mouth of the river. Straight ahead looks like a big old deadhead tree or log. To my right slightly is one of the red buoys. Farther over is a green buoy up over against that bank more. I think I'm going to do a little lap around that deadhead and then we'll head back into the river. Across from us is the Stonington Peninsula. This is Little Bay de Noc. Little Bay de Noc feeds into Lake Michigan to the south of us. So we're kind of heading east right now. To the north, quite a bit farther, is Gladstone. To the south is the city of Escanaba. And we are here at the deadhead, so we're going to make our turn. Going around it. There's some wave action coming in from the bigger part of the bay there. If you're paddling on rivers, the smaller kayaks are okay, but as you move into larger waters, you want to make sure that you have an appropriate kayak for that, especially if you're paddling on a bigger lake. So a longer kayak, and sometimes often a sea kayak like the one that Greg is paddling today, are the better option for deeper and bigger waters. So looking at the GPS unit, we're at 2.14 miles. Remember, it was 0.65 when we were up by the bridge. So you can do the math and determine how far that was of a paddle from where we were up by the bridge at US 2. When you have homeowners and general public accessing a waterway pretty readily with motorized boats, what are some ways that they can make sure that they aren't contributing to pollution of the waters? Think about that. What do motorized boats have that would require maintenance to make sure that they're operating properly? I'm hearing a blue jay to my right again. They seem to like this area. We've come to the right side of this stand of cattail reeds. So we're in a smaller side channel-ish section rather than being in the main part of the river. There's a house kind of directly ahead of me over there. You might notice that I have changed boats. Greg and I decided to switch boats. He was not having a comfortable time in this one. This is the sea kayak I was mentioning, built for bigger waters, less maneuverable in a smaller riverway, but this is working out just fine. It has a rudder in the back, which I can operate with my feet on the foot pegs. And to me, it feels more cumbersome to paddle and less comfortable to sit in. So we've come back under the railroad bridge, and directly ahead of me, falling down into the river, are some of the old railroad ties that apparently were forgotten and left behind. There's a strong smell of creosote, which is used in railroad ties as a preservative, I guess. It's kind of stinky. There's another turkey vulture circling up there in the sky. And the eagle that we saw earlier came back out over the river, but it was behind us. Something to note is to the north and west here of us, mostly west, just beyond the first two dams that you would come to if you were heading upstream at the County Road 420 bridge, the West Gladstone Bridge, there is an eagle nest right overlooking the river, and so that eagle might belong with that nest. So I picked up a cattail leaf, reed, because Greg wants to measure it to see if it's the narrow one or the other one. One is an invasive and the other is native. So one is a non-native and one is a native species. And I don't know if these are two from the same. We're going to bring them over to Greg and he's going to tell us that. Researching through the National Resources Conservation Service, we can see the difference between the broadleaf and the narrowleaf, and it appears that everything we saw on that part of the river was the narrowleaf, non-native, fairly invasive plant. Here we are at the Escanaba Harbor and at the end of our journey through the Escanaba River Watershed. We've traveled from the northern section where we started up near Humboldt, down past Gwin, and through some beautiful state forest land, skipped around several dams, and finished at the mouth of the river where it enters Little Bay de Noc. We have encountered several species of birds, evidence of animals, different types of land uses. We paddled on narrow, fast waters and wide, slower sections, shallow bottom scraping parts, and deeper pools. We started in May, noticing that the leaves had not yet emerged on the alders of the wetlands. As we progressed and the weather changed, we noted the mixed forests of pines, cedars, birch, maples, aspens, and spruce. Now, we're in fall. Leaves are changing and dropping. Many species are preparing for their winter, migrating, storing food, getting fat for hibernation. Remembering what we talked about at the beginning of our journey, we can hop on any of these boats right here in the harbor and go anywhere in the world that we want to go. Out through that little mouth from this harbor of safe refuge, of which there are many on Lake Michigan. So just outside of the Escanaba Harbor, we can look south from here and see where Little Bay de Noc joins Green Bay, which then joins Lake Michigan. And remembering that the Great Lakes are 21% of the world's fresh water, we want to make sure that we take really good care of them. So thanks for joining us on our little journey through the Escanaba River Watershed, connecting the dots as we went. And thanks to NOAA Be Wet program for helping make this possible. See you around.